So I recently made a fairly bold statement on X, and I said that I fully agree with legalizing pepper spray in the United Kingdom. I said it is a non-lethal thing and it would significantly shift the balance to enable people to defend themselves. But for the avoidance of doubt, any form of pepper spray is currently not legal in the UK. It is considered a firearm with a significant prison sentence just for possession of it. So bear that in mind. I'm not saying that it's legal. I'm saying that it should be legal. And this is obviously in response to a very broad question. Is the UK currently too soft when it comes to defending yourself? And regrettably, I have to say yes, it is, because we are not permitted under UK law to carry anything which is intended to cause anybody else harm, even if that is in self-defense. So there's been a lot of questions about this in the last sort of 24, 36 hours because of what's happened in the news. A lot of people asking different questions, what they can and cannot carry, what is the definitive legal stance on different things, and many of them do not have a definitive legal position, which is sort of part of the problem. It's one of my frustrations because as a lawyer, very often the answer is it depends. Now, in some situations, that's clear as to why. It depends on the facts and the circumstances, but it would be really useful if there was an absolute crystal clear set of rules that said you can and you cannot do these things, and everyone knows exactly where they stand. For example, carrying a knife. Now, most people would agree that unless you have a good reason to have it with you, you probably shouldn't have a knife with you. And that's the extent of what the law says. But what is a good reason? That is a question of fact for the court to determine. And by court, it might include a jury, because if you are taken to court, i.e. you're prosecuted for possession of a blade or a pointed article, Section 139 of the Criminal Justice Act, then you might have to explain yourself. And it would have to be a good reason explained and justified, not just an explanation as to why you had it with you, an actual good reason for having it. Now, then a lot of people would say, well, just carry a stick with you or carry a can of something with you, like the one I saw today was wasp spray or deep heat or something like that. Now, whilst they would probably not be considered a firearm because it's not necessarily a noxious substance, although it depends on the can. Again, it depends on what's in the thing. But to be a noxious substance or something else that's propelled by a canister or whatever, that might consider it then a firearm. But ordinarily, it might not be a firearm. It might not be a weapon per se, but you still might get into trouble for it. So I thought I'd do this video to explain a little bit more about what you can and cannot do, what the law would consider. Ultimately, it's a matter for you, what you choose to carry. The risk is upon you. But let's have a chat about it. So let's consider for a moment that you decided that you want to carry something with you for the purposes of self-defense. Now, there are three types of weapons. There are those that are made and designed as weapons, and so they are a weapon per se. Those include guns and things of that nature, things that are designed as a weapon. There are things that are adapted to be a weapon, which might be, the example I always use is a glass bottle which has been broken for the deliberate purpose of creating a jagged edge, which makes it a weapon because it makes it dangerous. Or you've got something else like a ruler that's had the edge sharpened, or a stick that's had the end sharpened into a point, whichever, so that it is made or fashioned into a weapon. In prisons, they use toothbrushes and they sharpen the end, and that makes a pointed weapon. Any of these things would be considered a weapon because it's been adapted to become a weapon. And the default position is you're not allowed to carry a weapon with you in public. You'll be in possession of a weapon. The third one, which is where a lot of people get stuck on, is something that you carry with the intent of causing harm. Now, that could apply to anything, even such as a selfie stick. So this selfie stick here, not a sponsored endorsement, by the way, but this selfie stick would lock out very much like a extendable baton would. Now, an extendable baton would look and feel, I mean, this is mostly plastic, but an extendable baton would look and feel very much like this. So if you were to have a, let's say, a metal selfie stick like this, you might decide that you want to take this out with you as a bit of a self-defense thing. Now, if you had no other reason to have this with you and you were caught bludgeoning somebody with this because you say they attacked you, but you had attacked them with this, and the police questioned as to why you had it with you, and you said, I had it with me for the purposes of self-defense, then Oddly enough, you might then get into trouble for having an offensive weapon with you, because by the definition of carrying it with you for the intent of causing someone else harm, that makes it a weapon. You went out with a weapon. And so this is why I think, in one sense at least, UK law is too soft in allowing you to defend yourself. There would still be the question, however, as to whether it would be in the public interest to prosecute you for having this thing with you to defend yourself if it was shown that you were quite clearly defending yourself because someone had attacked you. Because either way, on every occasion, there will be a decision under the Code for Crown Prosecutors in a two-part test. One, is there enough evidence to prove that you've committed an offence? For example, if you'd admitted that you carried this thing with you for the purposes of harming somebody in case they attacked you, that might be enough evidence to say that you went out with an offensive weapon. The second part is it in the public interest to prosecute you? Now, if everyone started going out with a selfie stick and intended to use it in self-defense to harm somebody with it, then they might then decide, well, yes, it is in the public interest because we don't want everybody to go out with something to start harming people, which, again, many people might feel that the UK law is too soft. Many people might, on the other hand, feel, well, that's right. We don't want people to go out, start carrying weapons. So what are we to do? Some people might then think, well, I'm going to take a knife with me. Well, again, firstly, having a knife with you, you need a good reason, and self-defense is not, at least yet, defined in law as a good reason. A good reason might be if you've got a fixed utility knife. A good reason might be that you've got it for work, you're going to or from work. Then even then I would suggest having it in your bag and in the back of the van and ideally locked rather than in your pocket. And being forgetful and going into the pub after work and you've got it in your pocket, it's no longer a good reason because, forgetfulness will harm the defense of a good reason for having that with you. Some people might then think, well, I'm going to have one that is exempt. For example, this thing, which if I change my focus on the camera, this is a folding pocket knife, which is technically legal to carry because it comes within the exemption of a folding pocket knife. Because when I bought this, I did a review on it. It is precisely 3 inches from the very tip of the hilt here, the edge of the hilt here, rather, to the tip of the blade, and it's immediately foldable at all times. But even then, if you were carrying this and the police said, why have you got this with you? And you said, well, it's in case anyone attacked me. I've got something to defend myself with. Then again, that makes it a weapon. And that overrides your exemption defense under section 139 to say that this is an exempt folding pocket knife. Because if it's clear that you've got this with you either to defend yourself or to intimidate somebody else, that makes it a weapon and therefore you shouldn't have it with you. And I can tell you with a degree of certainty that if you are out late at night or in any other kind of somewhat suspicious circumstances, not that being out late at night is by itself suspicious, but if you are out under any kind of suspicious circumstances and you, for whatever reason, you get stopped and searched because the police say, why are you here? And they look to you and then say, well, let's search you. We've got grounds to search you. And they find this. I can near enough guarantee you with a degree of certainty that you will be arrested for having a blade or other pointed article in a public place, and you'll be questioned as to why you've got it. That's not to say you'll end up being charged with anything. You might do, but you may not do. But if you are, like I said, if you're out late or you are out under some kind of suspicious circumstances, you're likely to be arrested for carrying something like this. So just because it's exempt doesn't mean that it's legal to carry. And certainly not if you're carrying it for the purposes of defending yourself. Now, the same goes really with aerosols, deodorant sprays or deep heat sprays or wasp or bug sprays and things like that. Again, by itself, it is not a weapon per se. It's not been adapted to be a weapon. But if you carry it for the purposes of harming somebody, that makes it a weapon. So again, if you happen to have it with you and they allege that you are carrying it for the purposes of harming somebody and you can't justify why you've got bug spray and you're on a train, then again, they might look upon that dimly and you might be charged with carrying an offensive weapon if they allege that you're carrying it for the purposes of using it as a weapon. On the other hand, I'm running a giveaway at the moment on my channel for Master Black Belt members or any other member at my sole discretion. Some of you have been members for many, many, many months, years, in fact, some of you, so I'm really grateful to you. I'll put the link to the form that you must fill in below for these things. Now, these are, again, they are not definitively expressed and defined as being quote unquote legal. There is just no law that prohibits it because Farb Gel say that these are 100% legal to own and to carry in the UK because they don't dispense any noxious substance, so they don't come within the firearms legislation. It is not designed to cause harm, so it is not a weapon per se. And if you carry it and you use it only for emergencies and you're only using it to identify a criminal that has attacked you, that you say has attacked you, then in that situation, you are not using it for the purposes or the intention of causing someone harm. Then you are only using it to identify someone that has attacked you, which sounds very reasonable and proportionate. It is still not without its legal risks, because unless and until a court says this is 100% legal, or legislation says this is 100% legal, there are still risks with carrying it. So on the basis that these are sold and supplied, and in my case, given to you for the purposes of identifying someone that has attacked you and not to harm somebody, then it is very difficult to see how you'd be prosecuted for having this. That's not to say it's without its legal risks, and there would also be civil risks as well, or even criminal damage risks. If you intentionally damage someone's clothing and there was no justification for doing so or anything of the sort, then again, you might be prosecuted and you might be sued for it, but that is entirely a matter for you. But nonetheless, these are sold. They've been sold for many years, and I'm giving them away, as I say, with Master Black Belt membership to my YouTube channel here, or membership to my website, or to other members at my discretion who have been members for many months or indeed years on this channel. But what else can I say? As I said at the outset, I would support, reluctantly, but I would support the legalization of pepper spray in this country, because there is the argument that if you arm the victims, you arm the criminals, but at the same time, they can already get hold of different weapons, stun guns, tasers, none of which are legal because obviously they are intended to cause some level of harm. Even if it's non-permanent harm, they are designed to cause harm. In fact, as I understand it, tasers are obviously weapons per se because they are capable and they are designed to discharge an electrical current at a high rate. And therefore I believe they are classified as a prohibited firearm. Therefore, it is an offence to possess, to purchase, to acquire, to manufacture, sell, transfer such a weapon without lawful authority. Lawful authority is obviously only granted to certain bodies, including police, which should never come to a member of the public unless there's some reason for training and these kind of things. But again, you'd need to seek lawful authority for doing it. And even then, they're not intended to be carried by members of the public. So tasers, no. And the same at the moment, as I understand it, goes for pepper spray. So pepper spray, CS spray, OC spray, or any other sort of parva spray, even those such as parva, which is currently used by the UK police. When I did my training as a special many years ago, we used CS spray then. Now I believe they use parva spray, which is slightly less harsh. But all of these would be considered weapons and prohibited under Section 5 of the Firearms Act 1968. So they are all considered firearms, for which there is an extensive prison sentence if you are caught in possession of a firearm without lawful authority. So at the moment, you cannot even possess any of those without such a license, which members of the public generally are not going to get, and certainly not for carrying around in public. So in a nutshell, the law is very strict. You cannot carry anything for the purposes of harming somebody, even if it's in your own defense. There is an extensive list of prohibited offensive weapons, which you can find on the Gov website. If I remember, I'll link it below, but you can find it just by searching for it. There's a whole list of banned items that you cannot own, even in private. Very briefly, there's been an argument over samurai swords over a certain length, curved swords over a certain length. There are exemptions, for example, antiques or swords that are made at any time using traditional methods. So traditional forging, folding, or any other kind of traditional methods would make those swords exempt. But even then, every situation turns on its own facts. I happen to know of a number of cases where individuals have been prosecuted for even private possession of a samurai sword because they alleged that it was an illegal samurai sword, whereas it may well have been exempt if it was made, as they would say, in the traditional methods. So I believe at least one of those cases that I know about was dropped sort of at the court steps, but not before the guy was dragged through court in a lengthy process. So it is always worth checking all of the law in advance to know whether what you have or what you're going to buy is legal. And then we come on to general self-defense. Now, I've done a lengthy video on the law of self-defense, including knives in much more detail than I've covered in this video. Those videos, they're about 40 minutes long. They are available on my website, BlackBeltBarrister.com. If you join there as a member, or indeed if you join as a channel member here on YouTube, you can see those full-length videos detailing all of the law, not all of the law, a lot of the law on self-defense and weapons and knives and so on. Much more detail than I've gone into here. And there's a particular emphasis for martial artists as well as to when it's necessary, what's proportionate and so on. So do check those out as well. I hope they'll be useful. But I hope this video is a useful overview and answers some questions. Doubtless it will raise further questions and goes without saying that it is not to be relied upon as legal advice, but I hope it's useful nonetheless. So thank you for watching. Like the video, share it, and I'll see you in the next one.